Thanks for doing the call this morning. My name is Tony Burns. I'm a solution architect with McAfee, and I'm also being joined with my colleague Anthony, who will be showing the demonstration of McAfee Endpoint Encryption and EPO, and I'll be covering the overview and the benefits of the McAfee approach to encryption. In particular, or rather a little bit of background on myself, so I'm an ex-Safeboot consultant, so I've been working in the encryption space for a number of years in healthcare and non-healthcare accounts. Okay, so today's agenda is we'll look quickly at some of the challenges for the NHS and why it isn't getting any easier, how McAfee with McAfee ePolicy Orchestrator can help with those challenges and basically make things easier in the current climate where obviously reduced budgets, need to do more with less, it's becoming more challenging. I will then provide an overview of the endpoint encryption solution or product. This is all fully managed with McAfee EPO, which is our short name for ePolicy Orchestrator, and then I'll hand over to Anthony in about 15 minutes time. Anthony then will take you through the look and feel of the product from an administration perspective, and then walk you through the migration to version 6 of endpoint encryption. At the end, what we'll do then, hopefully we'll have about, so I suspect this will take about 10 minutes to do the overview, about 15 to 20 minutes to basically do the demonstration, if you like, and then hopefully I'll have 10 minutes to cover off questions and answers. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to move on now. Okay, so the challenge, clearly, from a compliance perspective, you could argue the NHS is probably one of the most heavily regulated organizations in the world. If you look at the various acts, and of course this is not a definitive list of all the compliance standards the NHS is expected to adhere to, all I'm really all we're trying to share here really is that you guys are heavily regulated. It is in the public domain as part of the Information Governance Toolkit, and you are mandated to show metrics and information about how you're adhering, and I guess ultimately to protect the reputation of the NHS and protect the reputation of patient data and protect the reputation of the individual trusts, etc. Of course, that said, in the current economic climate, there's reduced budget given the squeeze in public expenditure. That's not making it any easier. And of course, we've got new initiatives where people are seeing opportunities to reduce costs around bring your own device to work and perhaps leveraging the cloud. Again, all these initiatives, although they're good and they're good business enablers, make it more challenging. Not only do we have the compliance drivers to adhere to, we have the security drivers, we have the reputational drivers, and of course we have the new initiatives. And I guess it's all about really reducing costs in IT and security, but at the same time, protecting your critical assets. Okay, so what I wanted to share here, if I may, is a slide which I appreciate is quite a busy slide, but it's a slide really to show the benefit of the McAfee approach. So when I talk to my customers, I talk about security enterprise platform. So we have a security enterprise platform or an enterprise security platform. So the idea being really is you have this overarching framework and it allows customers to fulfill various drivers but in the most efficient way. So for example, with the NHS, of course, full disk encryption is a key priority and that's a mandatory thing you need to do today. And that's, if you like, at the operational layer. Of course, we have to then provide information about whether that asset is encrypted. We have to manage that asset from an administration perspective, and we have to feed that information into the Information Governance Toolkit and further and higher up the stack. Now, where customers see real value in the McAfee approach is we have our ePolicy Orchestrator, which is shown here in the red under the management platform. We can manage many point solutions using the same architecture. Okay, the point of this slide is to show you've got the operational benefits. Once you've got an EPO architecture in place, it will then enable you to build out your framework or your roadmap for compliance. So for example, if you're mandated to encrypt devices, have antivirus, or perhaps even deploy DLP, you can use the same platform EPO. The operational efficiencies mean basically there's one agent on the endpoint or one single management console. In addition to that, because you have this unified management platform, it's easier then to provide situational awareness because we take feeds from other systems, okay? So that helps the NHS both in terms of operational elements, cost, but also in terms of if you don't have to manage and measure third-party contractors, service providers, or perhaps you have plans to move to the cloud. So in essence, I won't spend too much time on this. You have this overarching framework, and this is where customers see the value of the McAfee approach. It's perhaps one of the biggest reasons why Intel spent $8 billion acquiring McAfee because of our architecture. So just a last part on this particular slide here. The unified policy management, yes, absolutely. The other element to it is we have the Security Innovation Alliance, which is under the management platform. This piece here, if we don't cover off particular functionality with our platform, the high probability a third-party vendor does, and that will integrate with the ePolicy Orchestrator platform. Okay. All right then. So an integration strategy. So of course we have an integration strategy. We've done this for many years. So if you've got Safeboot today, and I appreciate there's a lot of NHS environments that have Safeboot, that's quite an adequate solution for encryption. But if now you want a management console that can manage more than encryption, so perhaps you want to manage DLP, antivirus, perhaps even host IPS or manage NAC, you can use the EPO console. Once you have the EPO agent deployed to that endpoint, it then enables you to start fulfilling your additional functionality on that endpoint. And perhaps then it'll give you an opportunity to reduce your cost to manage the endpoint. If, for example, you looked at, for example, I have multiple point vendors on that endpoint, but if I looked at McAfee has one single endpoint or EPO agent to manage multiple products. So straight away, there's a cost saving there, even if you just look at from a commercial perspective. From an operational perspective, your administrators, once they become familiar with the way EPO operates from a workflow perspective and how the product talks to that single agent on the endpoint, it becomes easier to add additional functionality into the platform. So with DLP or perhaps host IPS, that's easy to do because you're familiar, or your administrators are familiar with the processes that EPO uses to enable that technology, compared to if, say, you invested in another vendor solution who perhaps has a different management console, does have a different management console, and probably a different agent, or will have a different agent, but a different way of operating. And then if you compare that to the McAfee approach, which is, if you like, the unified platform approach. Okay, from a reporting perspective, hugely important. The biggest difference between McAfee EPO and Safeboot is with McAfee EPO, it gives you a single pane of glass. So we don't even need an agent or an EPO agent on the endpoint in order to see or identify whether the machine is encrypted or not encrypted. All right then, so I'm just going to do a quick overview of the product. So we have multiple products, as you'd expect for encryption. What I would say about these is they're all fully managed by EPO, which is our management system. So working from the left, we have our full disk encryption. So customers who are on Safeboot today, you can move to version 6 of EPO, and it retains all the functionality you have today with Safeboot, but now it's being managed with EPO platform. In addition, we have, so that's, if you like, for Windows, Endpoint Encryption for Mac, of course, is for Apple devices. We have more granular encryption, so this is for file and folder. The key one about this is it also supports removable media, so it's software-based encryption, and this is all fully managed with EPO. All right, so let's just go a little bit deeper into the actual architecture. So here we have the architecture, which is represented as the EPO management agent. Shown in the red really is the technology you could then enable. So for example, once you've moved from Safeboot to version 6, and I don't want to steal Anthony's thunder, but that's quite a transparent process. But once you've got the EPO agent on that endpoint, you can then enable additional technology, and perhaps that would fulfill requirements around the information governance toolkit. And here, perhaps in the future, that could be application control, it could be managed NAC, it could be host IPS, and of course antivirus, if you so chose. Of course, if you have existing antivirus solutions, they will coexist with the McAfee solution, but like I said earlier, it's perhaps an opportunity to take advantage of the management infrastructure. But just to be clear, it can coexist with other antivirus vendors as well. From a user management perspective, we've made things a little bit easier if we compare it to Safeboot. So native to EPO, we have the ability to synchronize natively with Active Directory or your LDAP infrastructure. And that's what we're showing here with the arrow. Okay, so as you'd expect, really, pretty similar look and feel to the Safeboot version. Yes, we do single sign-on. One thing which perhaps isn't obvious about the solution is the local recovery. Now, one of the local recovery enables the NHS to basically provide self-service around forgotten passwords. Now, the local recovery functionality is available in version 5 of Safeboot, but it's also available in version 6. So this is the ability for users to reset their own password natively on the client without requiring to make a help desk call or requiring a network connection. So that's a real cost saving there. If you typically look at a challenge response mechanism, it takes around about 25 minutes for that process to complete. If you compare it to local recovery, it takes around about 5 minutes. So we can get users back online very, very quickly. Of course, that's very important in healthcare if that's perhaps a nurse or a GP who needs access to that encrypted laptop. All right, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is basically just to give you a look and feel of the version 6 client. It's a bit cleaner, so to speak, if we compare to the Safeboot version. Like I said earlier, the big difference between a point vendor and the McAfee approach is our ability to see all endpoints. In fact, we don't even need an agent on the endpoint in order to detect whether the machine is encrypted or not encrypted. The way we do that is using rogue system detection. Okay, but in a nutshell, if you compare that to a point vendor, they need an agent on that endpoint to talk back to the management console. We don't need that with EPO. That's a big difference. It leverages the rogue system. All right, then a few bits and pieces. I appreciate running against time here. So, yes, the product leverages Intel, as you'd expect, now that Intel owns McAfee. But suffice to say, we do work with all the major manufacturers of hardware, if it's a Windows platform or an Apple platform. If you happen to be lucky enough to have the latest chipset, the Intel i5 or i7, then there's significant performance improvements around encryption because effectively it offloads those encryption and decryption processes to the chip itself. But like I said, you don't need that in order to use version 6 of this encryption. What will simply happen is for non-i5 or i7 core machines, it will just default back to its default behavior, which is similar to the Safeboot version, but with version 6. All right, some agent features here. As you'd expect, it's transparent to the end user, so it's very, very similar to the Safeboot version. The difference being really is all the functionality in Safeboot you have today, you've got with the version 6 and EPO. Management features, well, the management console is a web-based console. As I said, it's an enterprise platform. It's a platform that allows you to adhere to all the mandatory drivers that you need to follow in an easier and a more efficient way. Okay. And finally, which probably you'd expect anyway, is we've led the Gartner Magic Quadrant for a number of years. Okay. Just to wrap on this piece, really, one of the reasons for that is because this is a mature enterprise management console, and if I talked about the analogy of ERP, if you looked at where ERP came, where we had bespoke systems for HR, for finance, for accounts, for sales, etc., and you had all these discrete systems, but on overlap. Now with McAfee, you have something known as the Enterprise Security Platform. That allows our customers to be more efficient with the functionality, have a single platform, to be more responsive, to be able to collect the information at one point. And all of these things really are very, very pertinent today given the economic climate and also the big drivers around having to provide the relevant information around your compliance. Okay, so at this point here, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Anthony, who will actually show you the actual e-policy framework from an administration perspective. So this is we're going to hand over to the demo. So Anthony, I'm just going to hand over to you now, if that's okay?
Yep.
Or in fact, I might let Warren do that. Warren, try and do that. Warren, could you hand over to Anthony, please?
So let me just share my screen here. Okay. Hello, Tony. Can you just confirm? Can you see my PowerPoint?
Can indeed, yes, Anthony.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for that. Right. Okay. I'm just going to kind of like conscious of time here, so I'm just going to jump right straight into this. So what I want to cover. So we just talk a bit more about EPO management, so managing your security infrastructure. So what I have in mind are the unique scalability features that we have. So kind of like helps you to deploy if you have offices, branch offices geographically dispersed. How we simplify that and make it really scalable. We'll look at the simplified deployment, the tools we have in place, and then we're going to talk about migration from your current Safeboot, I guess, version 5 to what we have today. We look at it, we discuss a few new features, and then I actually walk you through an example of a migration process. So the focal point here, I mean, if you're making any investment in any solution, me personally, I always try to tell people that, look, we need to have the people who are going to sit in front of the solution and actually manage it for you. We need to think about them. We need to make life easier for them. Today's world, today's IT world is quite fast-paced, so you don't want people clogged down trying to determine how to work things out, how to, what buttons they should be clicking on. It should be user-friendly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So hopefully I should be able to demonstrate that to yourselves. So when it comes to EPO management, so managing your security infrastructure, talking about scalability features, we have specifically features. For example, we've got what we call the agent handler that's got caching facilities, okay, and also the ability to have distributed repository. So what that means is, if I show you this diagram here, is that if you imagine you've got maybe your HQ in London, so that will signify the EPO screen here, and then you've got offices in, let's say, Birmingham here, so that's agent handler 1 there, maybe Manchester, and let's say Newcastle, okay? So you've got 3 branch offices, and in each office, let's say you've got about 200 users each. So so when you're trying to scale, deploy, and manage centrally from a single pane of glass, as Tony put it there, one of the challenges is how you're going to allow these users to connect to the central server, yeah, to maybe download packages that you want to install, to get policies without clogging down the bandwidth, okay? So the design here actually addresses that problematic. So what happens is, with the agent handler, let's say you have a project, you need to deploy endpoint encryption, for example. So what happens is, each user typically needs to talk to EPO and download what is actually worth up to a 30 meg file, okay? So imagine all those users in the various regions downloading that at the same time. So that could be a bit of a problem for you. It could be a bit of a problem if you imagine they're doing that over a WAN link, let's say. So what the agent handler does is it acts as a proxy for your users and the central management system. So let's say one user needs to, you want to deploy endpoint encryption across the board. So the agent handler will actually download that 30 meg file once, and that's it. it can now distribute that to all the local users. And the same thing will apply for all the branch offices. So, you know, in terms of network usage, you know, it really saves a lot of bandwidth as far as that is concerned. You can also think about load balancing. So load balancing typically could be good within one specific network. So you've got a large number of users within one network or one LAN, if you will, or one office, yeah? So you can also use the agent handler to kind of distribute the load within your LAN as well, okay? So also, in terms of caching, so let's say one user needs to connect to EPO. It has a specific request. So again, that goes through the agent handler. So that request will be cached. So next time another user makes a similar request, there's no need to communicate back to EPO. Okay, so because of this design and architecture, you can actually manage over 200,000 nodes from one single EPO GUI, which is quite unique. You know, I've worked with several management systems in the past, and you know, when they talk about scalability, they do scale, but it is quite difficult because they're quite a huge number of components that you need to consider, that you need to bring on board to make it scale. Yeah, so it gets cumbersome when you start growing. Here, it's straightforward. On each site, just get an agent handler, install locally, maybe within the DMZ, and that pretty much acts a proxy for all your users, and you're more or less sorted there. Okay. My colleague mentioned as far as EPO management is concerned and the benefits that you have with it. He mentioned the SIA program that we have. So that's the Security Innovation Alliance. What that really is, or the benefit of that for you, is that, you know, it could be quite possible that you've got existing investments in other solutions and other vendors as far as security is concerned. All what we allow you to do with EPO is through the open API, we allow you to integrate with EPO, and hence giving you the ability to use the EPO services. So policies, deployment, audit, report, you can do all that as well. So, you know, that to me is quite a powerful tool. And don't forget, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm looking at this from the management perspective, as far as that person who actually sits there, who's responsible for managing this. So, you know, making life easier for them, you know, I think is quite crucial. And the ability to integrate all these solutions, I think would go a long way for the administrators. So, for example, you might have existing investments in solutions for risk and compliance. It could be maybe you've got a data security investments already to protect data, and I'm sure within NHS you most likely would have that. Or maybe you've got a network-based solution in place. So what we do is, if you look at this diagram, you see we've got a whole host of partners out there with which we integrate with in terms of the technology. So, you know, all I want you to take away from that is, you know, in case you do have that, using EPO further enhances the power to manage all the solution, again, from one single pane of glass. All right. So back to EPO, simplified deployment, reports, policy management. We've got great tools in place to help you do exactly just this thing. So we talk about automating deployment, scheduling tasks, running policies centrally, and you can use a very nice feature that we call tags. So what that allows you to do is to tag your systems according to various criteria, depending on how you want to manage these things. So the tagging helps the admin to actually say, I want to run a deployment based on this and that criteria, so he doesn't even need to know specifically which machines he's talking about, yeah, because all that factor in terms of tagging, machines have been tagged appropriately earlier. So all he needs to do is to go to the EPO interface and schedule his deployment. So having said that, I will just bring the EPO, my EPO server here. So on the left, just very briefly here, you can see I've organized my deployment here. So I've got offices. So if we imagine, I've got branch offices in Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle, and then here I've got London HQ. Okay. So by clicking on each, I've got an overview of my various machines in each location. Now, in terms of tagging, well, what does that do for me? Let's say I've got a project. Again, I'm an admin, and I've been instructed to deploy Endpoint Encryption to my London HQ PCs, for example. So how do I do that centrally? Well, I can, if you see here, I've got tags. So I've got a few tags here, if you will. So here I've got HQ, and I've got internet users, etc., etc. Yeah. So I can use any of these criteria to deploy, to run a deployment. Okay. So if we take another example, let's say I need to actually install Endpoint Encryption across the board, but only to internet users. Again, if we scroll through this, I'll see that, well, not all PCs are labeled as internet users. Yeah, so some we've got lab, we've got IT department. Okay, so all what the admin needs to do, if I just walk you through that briefly. So I just, if I'm going to create a quick deployment task here, just to show you the ease of use. So in this point, all I need to do is to specify exactly what I need to do. So in this scenario, it's product deployment. So where the tag comes in place is right here. So here you can see I can select any number of these pre-configured tags. So if my deployment is meant for only internet users, well, I will select that here, okay? If it's meant for internet users, but only in the London HQ, so I can open another tag, yeah? And I can select that here, yeah? So when I run that deployment task, automatically, only those specified computers will get the appropriate deployment packages and installments, okay? So that's tagging. And of course, Tony mentioned earlier, AD integration. So what you have also here is that EPO offers services to the various solutions that you might want to integrate or manage from EPO. So because EPO integrates with AD already, when you now bring in on board Endpoint Encryption or your virus scan solutions or your DLP solutions, what happens is you don't need to think again about how I'm going to integrate with AD. EPO has done that already for you, and it's offering that services to those solutions, okay? Now, with Safeboot, I'm not too personally, I don't have much, I've not worked much with Safeboot, but I remember that I've been made aware that you've got a certain collector that you need to use to integrate with AD. So all of that is being dropped here. All you need to do is install the extensions within EPO, get the packages ready, and that's all. EPO does the integration, the AD integration for you. You just concentrate, you just focus on the deployment and policy configurations. All right. So, so much for EPO. Now, let's look at migrating from Safeboot to Endpoint Encryption for PC. So EEPC features, well, what is new if you compare it to Safeboot or what you have already. Well, what we still do have, again, as my colleague mentioned earlier, we still have industry leadership for the past 4 years consecutively. We still have, just like Safeboot, the highest industry standard certifications for these solutions. Features that you're already familiar with, like single sign-on, self-recovery, and three-factor authentication, all that is still maintained here. So with three-factor authentication, typically, you can log in, or the users can log in using a password, or you can use smart cards or tokens if that's what you want to do. Now, the real winner for EEPC version 6, again, falls back to the management, the simplified policy management, and all the things I talked about earlier from the EPO point of view. Okay, so for the administrator, the process is really easy. Yeah, when they're working with the solution, and of course, when you talk about reporting and audit, everything is really simplified with EEPC, with EPO at the back end. We've also got upcoming a new release for EEPC, which will be version 7. Currently within beta right now. We're still testing with it. So the key benefit that this will bring for you, again, will be lower footprint on the endpoints, better performance, and you might have heard that we've been bought by Intel, so a lot of technology is coming out of this marriage. So we will be integrating Endpoint Encryption version 7 with Intel AMT, that's Advanced Management Technology. So that's all chip level technology. So slowly we're moving a lot of our technologies way below the operating system, way below the kernel, right there to the chip level. And again, EPO comes into discussion here because a lot of the things you will be able to configure and manage from within the EPO. And don't forget, we're talking about chip level technology here, giving me, and I have the ability to manage that from an application level a solution, which will be EPO. Okay, so migration from Safeboot to what you have now. Well, there are two main methods to migrate from Safeboot 5 to version 6. The first one, you just run a normal installation, so no need to decrypt what you currently have. You run your packages on the endpoint, and it will automatically upgrade to version 6 for you. Now, when you choose that method, it's if you want to have sort of a clean state, a clean start. So let's say you've got redundant access to some machines, maybe some employees that have gone, yeah, and we've not yet cleaned that out, yeah. So by using that method, you're starting afresh, more or less, in terms of user assignment to the various devices and endpoints. So you just run the installation, assign the users, and you're good to go. Okay. Now, should you wish to maintain some of the features or configurations and data from version 5, you can use the EEPC migration tool. So that tool will help you import the database and integrate it with the EPO-based database. Okay, so what that means is the user information like single sign-on, cached user information, self-recovery information, etc., will be maintained. Okay. So how does that look like? If I just show you a very quick example here. So imagine here again, I need to deploy an installation. So let's say my London office. and they're currently running Safeboot version 5. So it's very easy for the administrators to do. So if I create a new task here, so let's just call that deploy EEPC. So I will be doing that on a Windows-based, it will be for Windows-based machines. So here, all I need to do, again, here you can see a whole list of solutions. So, you know, that goes back to the fact that from EPO, I can control a lot of these products. So in this scenario, it's endpoint encryption I'm talking about. So I select that. What do I want to do? I want to install it. Yeah. Okay. So if I save that, so now my criteria or my first project will be based on 2 criteria. So it should be for my internet users. So because this is an initial deployment, I want to test it on my machines in the HQ. Okay. So I select all the criteria that I want there. Click on next here. So I want to run, I can schedule the deployment or I can run it immediately, okay? And I just make sure that my schedule status is on enabled, right? So on next, I get a summary page. So here I just get to quickly verify that, you know, this is what I want to do. And then I save that, okay? Now when I click on save, I get this bit coming up here. So what this tells me is that I've got an assigned and I've got an active client task to be run. So all I need to do here is to actually send this package or this deployment to the endpoint. Okay. So if I was to go to my systems, London HQ. So there are 2 ways I can do that. I've got a default time frame that I get a communication between the endpoint and the EPO server or maybe the agent handler, as I discussed earlier. By default, it's about 5 minutes. So that means within 5 minutes, that deployment will run by itself, or I can jump start it straight away from here by selecting my systems, and then I click on Wake Up Agent. So when I do that, that package gets sent to the endpoint, and it will install itself on that endpoint. So after the installation, I restart it, the encryption process will kick in. So Tony showed you some few slides earlier. If I just show you how that will look like, there you go. So this is a machine that's encrypted. This is what it will look like when the user powers up their machine. So all I need to do is to put in my password, and the decryption process will kick in. Should I have forgotten my password and I want to reset it, I've got an option here for self-recovery, or I can use the admin to help me set the password if I so choose. So I've got those 2 options built in there as well. Okay, so just to summarize the whole thing here, again, from the administrator's perspective, because they will be working with this on a day-to-day basis. I can see the admin guys on this call already nodding that, you know, if their day-to-day work has been simplified, and just imagining the ability to manage all these things from a single pane of glass, including investments that have been made for other solutions, that ability to manage, to deploy policy, packages, and also to run reports and audits, you know, it truly makes my life easier. So that's it from my end, and I do welcome any questions.
I'm sorry, could you switch to me, please? So I've got a summary slide, if that's okay. Thanks. Just while we're waiting for questions, we've had a couple of questions come in, so we're just collating those now. Just bear with me a second, guys. Okay, so We just put a summary slide up there. I know we've got a couple of minutes. So one of the questions that's come in via one of the attendees is, and here's one for you, Anthony, is in terms of the migration, so we've got our Safeboot version 5 environment. Do we need to decrypt those encrypted laptops in order to move to version 6 with EPO?
Very, very good question. So the answer to that is no. There's absolutely no need to decrypt. The solution, they work very well together. So as I showed you earlier there, all you need to do is to send out those packages, the installer, and it will run by itself on the endpoint and will upgrade your endpoints for you. No need to decrypt first.
Okay, and I think that's a great question, great answer there, Anthony. So in terms of, because the secondary question on the back of that was, okay, so in terms of the password, does the password change when that happens? So we've got, you're logging on with the Safeboot client, and then you upgrade the client to version 6. What would happen to the password?
The password. So if you use the migration tool, as I mentioned earlier, so not only the password, but things like single sign-on features and your self-recovery features, all of that within the database will be integrated within the EPO database. So as far as the user is concerned, it's business as usual.
Perfect, perfect. And I think that's the great advantage there really. So if I looked at, say, from a Safeboot perspective, customers who've invested in the Safeboot technology around encryption, clearly it's a big challenge then to upgrade if you need to reset users' passwords or you have to decrypt laptop machines. So one of the things that Safeboot's done for many years, and now McAfee has taken on that challenge, and this, as far as I know, is quite unique to McAfee, is the ability to seamlessly and transparently migrate that encrypted laptop, including the encryption status and the user credentials into the new version. So that's something that Safeboot has done for many years when I worked at Safeboot, and I'm really pleased that McAfee have taken that on board, because they understand that if customers like the NHS have significant investment in the technology, do not want that challenge of having to remove technology to upgrade. Okay, so I think that's the real value add, I think, of if you were going to look at perhaps other solutions or other vendors comparing to the McAfee approach. Okay, I'm just conscious of the time because I think we just hit up. I think we're almost on the hour, so to speak. Warren, have any other questions come through, please, Warren? Okay, so while Warren's just sifting through the question, so got a summary slide here, or we've got a summary slide here, so obviously we can share these slides with you. So really what we're saying here is the technology is future-proof, so if you invest in EPO today, we will support multiple platforms, so whether it's Apple, whether it's Windows, or maybe you have some budget to invest in the self-encrypting hard disks. You can use the same EPO architecture. You do not need to build a new management infrastructure. It's the same experience from an administration perspective. The other key advantage of the EPO is the ability, once the agent's on the endpoint, you can then add additional functionality. Perhaps you might want to enable device control USB devices, or perhaps enable DLP, basically using the same framework. Once the agent's on there, you have a lot of power at your disposal. Like I said earlier, we can coexist with other security vendors. Clearly, though, McAfee has a good spread in terms of the portfolio, and we've actually got over 100 products in our portfolio, and a significant number of those are fully managed with EPO.
Tony, can you hear me? We do have some questions. So there's a number of ways you can mute yourself, and I've just found them all now to unmute myself. So I've got about 4 or 5 questions here. So first of all, can EPO be used to manage devices / users in multiple domains from one console?
Okay, I'll hand it. Well, Anthony, you want to take that question, or shall I?
Yeah, sure. We can you can chip in as well. So the answer to that is yes. As I said earlier, one of the services that EPO offers you is that AD integration. So what that means is you can define various domains within AD, yeah. And as long as we've got that connectivity, we can talk to various users in various domains. Tony, you want to add something to that?
No, that's a great answer. And I can't really add any more to that, really. It's a great answer. We've got customers who have multiple domains, and with the EPO, supports multiple domains, as you'd expect with an enterprise.
Okay, so I'll just move on to the next question. What platform is the database? So is it SQL, Oracle, or your own?
Well,
Okay.
when you install this, I mean, you've got two options there. So it does come delivered with a SQL Express. Okay, so you can use that, or you can use a full-blown out SQL server, SQL 2008, for example, fully compatible.
Okay, so just the next question. Is there any NHS training available for EPO stroke EEPC?
Okay, so if I could handle that one, so because I'm sat in the McAfee UK office and I'm very near to professional services team, certainly we have packages or training packages that are designed for the NHS, so we can come back with that, but absolutely yes, we have training packages which are bespoke to the NHS around encryption and EPO, and of course the Safeboot piece as well. So we have Safeboot consultants who are very experienced in migrations, and obviously they can leverage that knowledge and expertise as part of the training during the training course.
Okay, so just a couple.
With the guys. Go ahead, sorry.
There's a couple of questions that I can answer here. So will the slides be available to attendees? Yes, we'll post those on our website. There'll also be a recording of the webinar, so you can view the slides and the webinar. So I'll send out details of those. And how can we arrange to do a proof of concept with this product? And the answer to that will be that you'll get that opportunity. Each person that's attended today, their account manager from Bytes, will be giving them a quick call or dropping them a quick email to see if there's anything they would like, any questions, or indeed proof of concept's great. I guess our account manager will be in contact about that. Tony, have you got anything to add about a proof of concept?
Yeah, all I would say is, great question by the way in the POC. So the NHS, you're licensed for all of our versions of the product. So if you have a grant number, you can download the information. We've got a best practice guide about the Safeboot migration to version 6. That's all at your disposal today. Clearly, we want to help you. We have our partners, which obviously is Bytes, and we have our own professional services as well. So, what is the best fit for you. But there's an awful lot of information on the download portal which you can download today with your grant number. In particular, what is a recommended read is the best practice guide for migration of Safeboot to McAfee.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions actually. So this probably relates to an earlier question, but can policies be set for generic users, and how granular is the endpoint encryption to allow specific devices read-only / read-write?
Okay, so just to play that question back, are we talking about the full disk encryption product? And if we are, it can be granular in the sense that you can have policies per user, per group of users. But the full disk encryption product doesn't really have the concept of read and write. If the question sounds like it's more device control related, then yes. So the ability to say, okay, can I read an encrypted stick? Yes, you can. If you want to write to that encrypted stick, then perhaps you want to enforce encryption to that encrypted stick. So In other words, if you don't allow it to write in an encrypted state, then you can only read, and if you want to read and write, it has to be encrypted. So that's more around our device control product, if I've understood the question correct.
So I've just got a bit back there. So it's relating to pen drives, CD, ROMs, etc.
Okay, I thought as much. Okay, so the answer to the question is yes. So the user experience would be, so let's for argument's sake, the user attaches a pen drive to the computer. So with the product is actually known as Endpoint Encryption for files and folders, and you can configure that policy to say, okay, if the user says, or prompt the user says, I've just detected this pen drive is not encrypted, would you like to encrypt? If the user says no, then we'll put the pen drive into read-only mode. If the user says yes, then they'll be able to write the device, but it will be encrypted.
Okay.
So the device saver is very flexible. So that particular product is the Endpoint Encryption for files and folders.
Thanks very much, Tony. I've actually got two more questions, so I think it's good, ask as many questions. That's exactly what today's about. So next question is, can I ask you to confirm that the migration process for Safeboot 5.1 devices, the only requirement is to push the new EPO client?
Okay, so good question. So what I would say about that is, you need to be clear on the version of Safeboot. Okay, so what I would say is in the best practice guide, we talk about it needs to be at the minimum version 5.1.7. Okay, so the reason for that is when engineering teams were building out the version 6 product, they had to test with a particular version of the product. So at the time, it was 5.1.7. Now, in terms of mechanically how this thing works is, imagine you've got your Safeboot client there today, like and how Anthony described, you need to push out an agent, so this will be an EPO agent to that endpoint. So it will coexist with the Safeboot agent, and then over the course of time, when the machine is rebooted, it will perform an in-place upgrade. Okay. As part of that process, what will actually happen is you'll have two agents. You'll have the Safeboot agent and the EPO agent. As the upgrade completes on the endpoint, you'll find the Safeboot agents disappear because that will have been replaced with the EPO agent. From the user experience point of view, it's totally transparent. But to be clear on the question, yes, an EPO agent needs to be pushed to the machine. And for a short period of time during the upgrade process, there'll actually be two agents in the machine. But when the upgrade is complete, you'll find the Safeboot agents will, for want of a better expression, disappear.
Okay.
It will no longer be required.
Okay, that's great. We are getting questions coming in, so I'll just continue reading them if you're okay with that, Tony.
Yeah, fine, yeah.
Next question, has Safeboot been end-of-lifed?
Okay, so good question. So what I would say is there's been many versions of version 5, okay? So version 5 was released to market in 2006. So we can share as an action or our statement is around end of life. The current version of version 5 has not been end of life. Earlier versions have started to go into end of life. So we're referring to versions going back to 2006, okay? But as an action from this call, we can share with you, or if you've got Google in front of you now, if you do a Google for McAfee products or product support, you'll find there's a public-facing link which shows our statements around end of life for all McAfee products. And we can take an action to share with you that particular link. Okay, so just to be clear, later versions of 5 app is not end of life, it's the earlier version. So
just a bit of clarification, someone has asked, it is 5.1.7.0 end of life.
Well, if you give me a moment, I will go to the link now. So I'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay.
I'm just going to open up the link on the web. So while we're doing that, do you want to go to any other questions?
Okay, so on the DLP product, can you configure it so that the pen drives are only accessible on the internal network and cannot be read on an external PC, for example, a home PC?
Yeah, okay, good question. So we have, with the DLP technology, which is fully managed by EPO, it has the capability to make a detection between, if you like, an internal agent or network and an external. Basically, in essence, what it does is the DLP agent can be configured to check for the presence of an Active Directory server, for example. By that, if it sees the Active Directory server, for example, it can then make the determination the machine's on an internal network. If it's on an external network and they can't see the Active Directory server and it's on an external network, and then apply the appropriate controls or restrictions around the use of a particular device.
Okay, so you're I've got one more question so far, Tony. So once migrated to v6, can the current Safeboot server be decommissioned, or do we upgrade the current server? Okay.
Great question. So just think, the way certainly when I've done this in the past, and I've been involved in various Safeboot migrations for many years, what Anthony's described is, I'll call that a parallel upgrade. So you have, let's call it the legacy Safeboot environment, and then you build your new EPO environment. Over the course of time, when you start deploying the EPO agents to the existing Safeboot machines, what you'll find is over the course of time, the Safeboot server will stop talking to machines that have been upgraded to version 6. So over the course of time, effectively, the Safeboot server will become obsolete. So at some point in time, we will then have the ability to decommission that server. That said, of course, for machines that have not synchronized, or say, for argument's sake, Tony, who works at a particular hospital, has had a vacation for 18 months, and he's got a laptop at home. When he comes back into the business, that laptop might not get upgraded because, of course, it's been locked away at Tony's house. So what I would suggest is, yes, you could decommission that Safeboot server, but you need to archive that server just in case you have employees on long-term sick or long-term holiday, and they return back to the business. So you do need some ability there, okay, if you want to leverage the seamless migration path that we have with EPO.
And can the EPO server be virtual?
Yes. And we have a best practice guide around virtualization and what we recommend for virtualization platforms. And again, if I recall correctly, that is contained within the download Endpoint Encryption, or certainly contained for the download for the McAfee EEPC policy orchestrated software documentation. Okay, sorry guys, while we've been doing that, I guess I'm multitasking here, which is quite challenging for a young man like myself. I'm just looking at the link here, and obviously we can share this with you. In terms of the full disk encryption, it looks like 5.1.x has gone end of life as of May 2012. Just bear me a second, is that right? Yeah. Okay, and then we've released a KB article. So what we can do as an action is we can share that with you guys. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to check now again. Just reading the correct column. Like I said, I'm not great at multitasking. I'm doing my best. Where are we? Endpoint Encryption. Yeah. Okay. So what we'll do then? So it's basically 5.1.x. So what we can do, if that's okay, we can share with everyone on the call the particular link which shows all our products, and also the KB article explaining or advising customers to upgrade to 5.2.x. Okay. Now, from my perspective, or as a personal opinion, of course, what we're saying here is if you can still use 5.1.x if you so chose. What we're simply saying is from an engineering perspective, so if you needed any fixes, then we're recommending to move to 5.2.x. If you need to do that, it's probably a very, very good time to consider upgrading to version 6 as opposed to doing an incremental upgrade to 5.2.x. Okay. Just